No one came to the zoo expecting to witness a miracle. But when a forgotten German shepherd locked eyes with a little boy and pressed his paw to the glass, time seemed to stop. What the child did next stunned every onlooker and changed the dog's life forever. Most people came to the city zoo to see lions, elephants, and rare birds whose bright colors dazzled in the afternoon sun. But tucked away near the end of the path, behind a glass enclosure with a fading sign, lived a creature no one expected to find in a place like this. A German shepherd labeled Rare Himalayan Mountain Hound. He paced the same worn trail along the glass wall every day, his nails clicking against the concrete floor. His coat, once thick and glossy, had grown dull from months of confinement. Children occasionally paused to stare, pressing their fingers to the smudged glass before. Their parents tugged them away to see something more interesting. The dog watched them go, his ears lowering with each departing footstep. No one knew exactly how he'd ended up here. Some said he'd been confiscated from smugglers who claimed he was a rare breed. Others believed he was abandoned by someone who no longer wanted him. Whatever the truth, he was treated like an exhibit, fed on schedule, and left alone when the crowds thinned. He was a dog who had forgotten what it meant to belong. Each evening, as the zookeepers locked the gates and the last echoes of laughter faded, he would sit by the glass, staring out at the world he could no longer touch. His eyes held a sadness deeper than words could convey, a quiet longing for something he couldn't name. And though hundreds of visitors passed by every day, not one of them ever guessed that behind that glass was a heart breaking a little more. With every sunrise that on a crisp Saturday morning, the zoo was alive with chatter and the shuffle of families eager to see the wonders inside. Among them was a young couple pushing a stroller. Their little boy, no more than 2 years old, bounced excitedly in his seat, his blue eyes wide with curiosity at every bird and monkey that crossed his gaze. They stopped at the aviary first, then the reptile house, each stop greeted with squeals of delight. But as they rounded the corner to the quieter end of the zoo, the boy's excitement shifted into something else, a sudden, silent fascination. He pointed a small finger toward the enclosure with the dull glass and the forgotten sign. His mother followed his gaze, puzzled. "Sweetheart, do you see something?" she asked softly. But the boy didn't answer. He simply climbed down from the stroller with surprising determination, his little shoes slapping the pavement as he toddled forward. Behind the glass, the German shepherd lifted his head. At first, he didn't react, assuming it was another fleeting visitor. But when he looked closer, he saw the boy standing still, staring back with eyes as solemn as his own. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition neither age nor language could explain. The boy pressed his palm flat against the glass. His breath made a small foggy circle that slowly disappeared. The dog inched closer, his ears twitching in uncertainty. Around them, other families kept walking, oblivious to the moment unfolding in the quiet corner of the zoo. The boy's parents exchanged a look, sensing that something unusual was happening. They didn't know yet that this simple gesture, this tiny hand on the glass, would be the first step toward changing everything. The German shepherd hesitated, his breath fogging the glass between them. No one had ever lingered like this before. Visitors usually came and went, their interest as brief as a passing cloud. But this small boy did not look away. He stood rooted in place, his hand pressed firmly against the smudged pane, waiting for something the dog couldn't name. Slowly, as if pulled by an invisible thread, the dog stepped closer. His massive paw lifted, trembling, and came to rest opposite the boy's tiny palm. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two souls separated by glass, bound by a quiet understanding that a woman passing by stopped in her tracks, her mouth falling open. Others soon gathered, drawn by the sight of the big, solemn dog meeting the gaze of the child. Whispers rippled through the growing crowd. Some people reached for their phones to snap photos, but no one dared to speak too loudly. Afraid to break the spell, the boy's father crouched beside him, watching in astonishment. "He's never reacted like this to any animal," he murmured to his wife. The mother nodded, her hand pressing to her heart. Something about the dog's eyes, so tired, so full of longing, made her throat tighten. The German shepherd let out a soft, low whimper that vibrated through the glass. The boy blinked, then placed his forehead against the panel, as if trying to be even closer. In that instant, the dog's tail gave a small, hopeful wag, the first movement of joy he had shown in months. Around them, silence deepened. It was as if everyone sensed they were witnessing something sacred, a bond forming where no one thought it possible. The boy began to whimper softly, his eyes filling with tears as he reached both hands toward the glass. His small shoulders shook with each sob, and though he couldn't form the words, everyone watching understood. He was pleading, not for a toy, not for attention, but for the dog behind the barrier. The German shepherd lowered his head, pressing his nose as close as he could. His tail moved again, a slow, uncertain wag that hinted at something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. His ears perked, and he let out a sound that was somewhere between a bark and a cry, a raw plea that echoed in the stunned silence. The woman in the crowd wiped her eyes. He knows, she whispered to no one in particular. That dog knows that. Little boy cares. The boy's parents stood close, their faces pale with emotion. They had come to spend a simple morning together, never imagining their son would be the one to see what everyone else overlooked. The boy leaned forward until his cheek rested against the cold glass. His breath made a warm halo around his face as his sobs turned into quiet hiccups. Inside the enclosure, the dog pressed his paw higher, trying in vain to reach him. Their movements were a mirror, two beings separated by inches of glass but joined by something deeper than any cage could contain. One of the zookeepers approached, her keys jingling nervously. She had seen thousands of visitors, but never anything like this. Her voice shook as she spoke to the boy's parents. Would you like to meet him properly? In that moment, the boy's tears stopped. He turned, eyes wide, as if he understood. Something important was about to happen. The zookeeper led the family around the back of the enclosure to a small door. The boy clutched his father's hand, his tear-streaked face shining with hope. With a slow creak, the door swung open, revealing the German shepherd standing perfectly still. His eyes locked onto the boy, and for a heartbeat, no one dared to move. The dog took a tentative step forward, his nails clicking on the concrete. The boy reached out a trembling hand, and when it landed gently on the dog's head, the shepherd let out a sigh so deep it seemed to empty months of loneliness. His tail began to wag, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. People gathered behind the glass wall, watching with damp cheeks as the boy buried his face in the dog's fur. The shepherd leaned into the small body, his entire frame relaxing. As though he finally understood, he wasn't alone anymore. A hush fell over the crowd. No one wanted to disturb the fragile peace unfolding before them. The zookeeper swallowed hard, her voice husky. We've been trying to find a placement for him. He doesn't belong here. She looked at the boy's parents, her eyes hopeful. Would you consider taking him home? The mother covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. The father knelt to look his son in the eye. Would you like that, buddy? The boy didn't speak. He simply nodded, his arms tightening around the dog's neck. Word of the moment spread quickly, and by the end of the day, countless strangers had offered help, donations, supplies, anything to support the shepherds. New start. That night, as they walked out of the zoo together, the German shepherd looked back one last time at the place that had caged him. Then he turned, following the boy into a world where he finally belonged.